Welcome back. I was thinking we're going to call this Vampire Week, but ultimately we're going to talk about vaping. But before we do, for those of you that are watching this on video, you notice I shaved all my hair off. And I just have to tell the story that my wife is in love with two actors, Jason Statham and The Rock.
So basically most of the actors that I love on screen are bald.
Have no hair at all. Nothing. And so I went to the barber and I showed him a picture of Jason Statham and I said, make me look like him. Because, when you go bald, it's just so irritating because hair just sticks up everywhere. It's like I have none, but it's irritating. And so I've been saying I was going to do this for a year. And so I showed him a picture. He did all the things that he could do. And then he gave me the mirror to look at. And I'm like, but I don't look like Jason Statham.
He said, I look like The Rock. I can't pay you because I look like The Rock, not Jason Statham. I just died. That was so funny.
So anyways, a little glimpse into the neuroses of the Brain Warriors Way podcast.
Yes, you'll get more of it because we're going to talk all about all about toxins and natural makeup. I'm going all natural and wearing a lot less makeup in general, but so you're going to hear more about our neurotic stuff that we do at home as we go. But today we're talking about vaping.
We are. And, the Brain Warriors Way podcast, we also have a new feature called Brain in the News. And we're going to do that in episode 3. But there's so much in the news about vaping. I woke up this morning and the CEO of Juul was fired. And
am I supposed to feel bad?
We've been talking about if I was an evil ruler, how would I create mental illness in America? Well, I would create vaping companies that basically market to children.
Well, and they'd make things that taste good and look cool. And so there was the high school that my daughter used to go to before we started homeschooling. They did a locker search because it became such a problem. So many kids were doing it. They did a locker search. They were going to search everyone's lockers. So of course, what do the kids do? They go and they run and they get everything out of their lockers, and all of the toilets got stopped up because they all went and tried to flush them down the toilet. So yeah, it's a big problem.
So humans will always invent ways to hurt themselves.
Which is so weird, right? You would think self-preservation.
Weird. And Juul, I think one of the reasons it got in trouble, it was really marketing vaping as a healthy form of smoking. And when you vape, you're not inhaling a lot of the tar and other carcinogenic things. You're just getting pure nicotine and heated up. And people don't understand that when you inhale fire or things that are really hot, what you're doing is you're damaging the very delicate, thin layer in your lungs, those little air pockets called the alveoli, that then what you're doing is you're burning them up and you're making it harder to get oxygen into your body. And why do we need oxygen? It runs every cell in your body. And your brain, 2% of your body's weight, but it uses 20% of the oxygen in your body.
So we also need to talk about the illnesses and the deaths related to vaping that are becoming an epidemic. So there's 9 deaths now, 530 illnesses. People who've become ill, who've gone into many in the ICU, they're on ventilators. And the question I have, because I used to work in the ICU with people with ventilators, what they were describing sounded almost like pneumonia, right? So it sounded like some form of pneumonia. So my question is, was it like a type of aspiration pneumonia? Was it a bacterial thing that's in the vape? What's causing this?
Well, so the theory, at least at the moment, especially with the flavored vaping, is that there's a vitamin E acetate byproduct that people were reacting to in a negative way.
So almost like an aspiration pneumonia then.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I actually did a show about 18 months ago with Dr. Oz for the Dr. Oz show where he was vaping caffeine. And so it was really interesting because I scanned him while he was vaping caffeine. And what we showed is it literally activated his occipital lobes. So that's the visual cortex, which meant if on his set he saw one of the cute interns walk by, he'd be paying more attention to that.
Well, let's just say he'd be more likely to. Let's not say he did or he will.
Well, I don't know,
right?
But he would be more likely to pay attention. But his frontal lobes dropped, which
That's not
means
good.
he's more likely to make a bad decision and perhaps lose half of his net worth and visit his children on the weekends.
That's so awful. Okay.
But what we saw is, so you're getting a high concentration of nicotine, marijuana, or caffeine, whatever it is you're
Or those
vaping,
wax pens or another thing.
whatever you're vaping, and it's going to have a more powerful impact. And that's one of the issues with marijuana today is it's not the same. It's not your grandfather's marijuana, but it's much more potent. And
I just had a vision of a grandfather sitting in his rocking chair smoking pot.
But it's my generation, many of us are grandfathers.
My mother's generation.
Right? That really escalated
Right.
the use of marijuana in this country.
Right.
And so there are a whole bunch of grandfathers out
Right.
there smoking.
So funny.
Anyways, what can you take away from this? Is it's an epidemic. It's been
It's killing people?
it's been marketed as a lie that vaping is a healthier form of smoking. The incidence of stroke is the same in vaping as it is in smoking.
Oh, interesting.
That high doses of nicotine, they're addictive. It's going to take more and more to get the same response. It prematurely ages your brain. And
your skin.
You want to be more thoughtful, more careful. And as I wrote about in Feel Better Fast and Make It Last, it's something that helps you feel good now, but not later. And ultimately what brain warriors want is they want to feel good now and later. If you do something and it's going to make you feel better tomorrow, you want to do that today. So that's your frontal lobes teaching you to do things for now and later.
Well, and quite frankly, any company that markets something that they know is not good for you and they lie about it and they market it to children, I'm sorry, I have no empathy.
Well, and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo banned flavored e-cigarettes and vaping products across the state through an emergency executive action. So ban the sale of flavored e-cigarettes and vaping. Cuomo said that flavored products, including bubblegum flavor, are geared toward young people. And he also proposed legislation to halt ads aimed at young people. So the vaping companies are going to, ultimately, because of the illness that it's causing, they're going to be class action lawsuits.
Oh, yeah.
And, but what often happens with these companies is they get into hot water in the U.S., so they go to Mexico or they go to Japan or they go to China or they go to other places around the world to sell the poisons we sell to the American population.
Well, let's hope that they're watching and paying attention to what's happening here and smart enough not to do it.
So who vapes? I think that's actually an interesting question. Who vapes?
Well, I know high school kids do, for sure.
Well, some do. And is it the anxious kid who vapes? Is it the ADD kid
Or the ones who want to look cool?
Is it the ones who feel like they don't fit in,
Right.
and that will help them fit in.
Is it social pressure?
Why do you vape? Because I know people who are listening to us vape, and they're sort of irritated with us, and we're sorry.
And one of the questions I have is, are you vaping because you actually believed that it was better for you? Did you switch from cigarettes to vaping because you bought into the marketing that it was supposed to be better for you? And if so, how sad?
Almost 1 in 20 U.S. adults now uses e-cigarettes, so roughly 10 million Americans.
Wow.
More than half of them are under the age of 35. 1 in 3 e-cigarette users are vaping daily, according to a report in the Annals of Internal Medicine. And e-cigarette use is closely associated with other high-risk behaviors. So I think we should be concerned. So 20-somethings, smokers of traditional cigarettes, unemployed adults are higher.
And isn't that odd that they target that population and because they're expensive? Seems so odd, counterintuitive.
So there are clearly vulnerable groups. And, it goes back to the question that we often ask, is it good for your brain or bad for it? And I would argue, based on the information we have at Amen Clinics, that it's bad for it because you're bathing your brain in something that will wear out your pleasure centers, that also is a vasoconstrictor. That means it constricts blood flow to the brain, which makes it harder for oxygen and nutrients to get to every cell in your brain. So stay with us. We're going to talk more about it. Is there one lesson you learned? Post it on any of your social media channels, and we're always grateful. In fact, we'll read a couple of reviews next time. If you leave a review at Apple Podcast or BrainWarriorsWayPodcast.com, we'll enter you into a raffle to get a signed book of the Brain Warriors Way cookbook. And people love that cookbook, including me. Stay with us.
Welcome back. We are talking about vaping this week and how it's become not only an epidemic, but the illness related to it's also becoming an epidemic. There's over 530 illnesses. We talked about that in the last episode, 9 deaths so far. There's 3.5 million teen users in the US, which is just crazy to me.
Before we dive into it, can I read some reviews?
You can.
We ask them for reviews all the time. So this is from Maria H. on Yelp. I am a health coach and specialize in working with kids with ADD, ADHD. My husband played football in the NFL and went into the Amen clinics to do a SPECT scan and go through the study. I decided to have my son's brain scanned and also went through the program. Son has ADD ever since we can remember. It was fascinating. Having the ability to see the brain and why they both do the things and acted in certain ways was such a relief. However, it went even further. Getting to talk with the doctors and get on a protocol to help both of them improve the quality of life was priceless. It has been about 2 months out, and they are both doing fantastic. I cannot recommend Amen Clinics enough. I feel like everyone needs to get scanned.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Maria. Also, this is from KJams3. This podcast is always practical and informative. I love that it's generally under 20 minutes. Yes, the world has a short attention span. As a busy mom, I can feed my brain on the way to and from school, sports, without needing to set aside an hour.
Love it.
One more. Have learned so much about the brain and brain health from listening. I now walk consistently and eat healthy because of you. This is Melster 807.
Awesome. So let's talk about a question. So if you guys learn anything from this podcast, please post it. Or if you have a question, because we're going to talk about not only vaping, e-cigarettes, juuling, what it's doing to you, but how do you get off of it? If you've been doing this, how do you stop if you know it's bad for you? Because we've been lied to. We've been told that it's not bad for you. And so what do you do to get off of this? So if there's anything you learn, anything you want to know, please post it. Go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. You can go to the review section and you can leave us a question. You can leave us, whatever it is you want. You can also tag us on Instagram. That would be great. We would love that, and share this information. So let's talk about this. There's 3.5 million teen users, just teen users. And they all think this is cool. They taste good. They look pretty. They're all, kids who feel awkward. This is something they can do when they're at parties, so they don't feel so awkward and they feel like they fit in and it's a social thing. And this is a problem. But let's talk about something really quick. So one of the marketing strategies is that they say that they're more environmentally friendly, which is true. They're more environmentally friendly, but they're not more friendly to you. And did you know they contain heavy metals? So talk a little bit about what heavy metals do to your body when you're inhaling them.
They're terrible. I mean, they actually make your brain look sick, older than they really are. And so whether it's lead or heavy metals, and coming up, we're going to do a toxin week. It's just, do you really want to be inhaling that? I mean, besides the pure heated up nicotine or caffeine or marijuana that can damage your lung cells, as we talked about. If you love your brain, what vaping does is prematurely age the brain.
And one study showed that it actually decreases sperm count in men. So something to pay attention to if you're trying to have a baby and fertility problems. And one thing, it might be a little bit of a blessing in disguise. This is going to sound terrible because I don't mean this for the people who have been ill, for the people who have died prematurely, died early. It's a horrific thing. What I mean by a blessing in disguise is that we have been saying this since it came out. We've been reading these studies. We've been following it. We've been saying how awful it is since it first started. But the problem with things that take a long time to affect you, that aren't instantly visible, right? So the problem is when it's chronic, people don't see it, and as long as it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So if it's not affecting you immediately, people don't pay attention to it. And since this happens to be an acute issue, suddenly it's become an epidemic to the point where New York is banning them, right? And I think other states may be following suit. But when it becomes an acute issue like this, where people are getting whatever type of lung disease this is, where they're going into the ICU on ventilators, whether it's some type of aspiration pneumonia or whatever it is, when it's that acute and there are this many deaths that happen quickly related to it, now people pay attention and they get scared and they stop. And what we're hoping is that you get scared enough before something happens to someone you love or to you.
Well, but a lot of people that use drugs in any form, they do it because there's an underlying issue. Mm-hmm. So I wrote a book with David Smith, who was so much fun because we actually saw him by random chance in New York last week when we were there. But David Smith is the founder of the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic, mm-hmm. considered the father of addiction medicine in the United States. And he and I together wrote a book called Unchain Your Brain, Breaking the Addictions That Steal Your Life. And so the first thing, it comes with information. Oh, this may not be as safe as I was led to believe.
Right.
The second one is kicking in your frontal lobes to protect you by going, is this good for me now and later versus is this just good for me now but not later? And then we talk about knowing your brain type. We've done that a lot, but all addicts are not the same. They're impulsive addicts, and I bet a lot of impulsive addicts are using vaping, especially caffeine and nicotine, as a way to feel more focused. They're self-medicating an underlying ADD mm-hmm. or are spontaneous type 2 brain type. There's a compulsive addict that once they start, they just think about it all the time, over and over, on and on. There's the sad addict that actually using it to treat an underlying sadness or depression. And there's an anxious addict, and they're more likely to vape marijuana, for example. And so knowing your type, and you can learn your type for free, go to brainhealthassessment.com, and then treat the underlying issue. We often recommend first with supplements and then, medication if needed, but treat the underlying issue, but not with something that could hurt you, but rather something that could help you.
And this information is so valuable and it can help so many people, because what I was trying to say is that fear can be a good motivator. It really can. It can kick in those frontal lobes, maybe not in the best way.
So some anxiety is good. We always talk about some anxiety. You need some anxiety.
So one of the things I was going to say is that my uncle, who was a heroin addict, he often still says that the one thing he's most proud of with his addiction after he kicked it was that he scared me so badly. He gave me shock therapy it's true. It kept me from doing it. My fear of drugs was so overwhelming. Now, I totally had the personality makeup, the brain makeup to want to self-medicate, but I chose something else. I chose exercise. I didn't always choose healthy things, right? But they weren't as bad as heroin, for sure. So I overdid other things. But my point being, if I had had this information, like many people out there listening, if you have the right information, you can choose things to help self-medicate that are healthier for you. If you go take the assessment and you learn some of the things that can be a healthy alternative, but a little fear isn't always bad. That's what I was trying to say.
Some anxiety is critical
right.
for you to do the right thing. I mean, in the Brain Warriors Way, we talk about, the real weapons of mass destruction, highly processed pesticide, highly processed food that's pesticide sprayed, high glycemic, low fiber, stored in plastic containers. But vaping is another weapon of mass destruction that we just want to bring to your attention and encourage you, if you are vaping or you have a teenager that's vaping, to see it as a problem to solve.
And we promised them we were going to talk about how to stop. So I think the first step is to do what you said, figure out if you're medicating an underlying issue, and take the brain health assessment. That can really help getting on some of the right supplements. And if you need medication, get the right medication, but going to see a healthcare professional, because they'll help you with that underlying issue and they'll help you with the proper steps to wean off of this and get off of it. Because it's not good for you. I mean, people are getting really sick.
Let me tell you, because sometimes they'll do that and the healthcare professional will just put them on a medicine. So, for me, what I would want you to do is know your baseline. How much are you vaping now? And then cut it down by 5% a day or 5% every couple of days. And that way you're not going to go through withdrawal. So I've helped so many people get off cigarettes and caffeine. And I'm just someone who doesn't believe in suffering.
I like that.
And so, if you just cut it down by a little bit every day, but have a plan, and then when the urge comes, you should write down, okay, here are 3 things to do when the urge comes. And one of the things that's just so stinking simple is get a lavender sachet. And when you feel like inhaling the vaporized whatever, inhale, the scent from lavender, because it's been shown to decrease both anxiety and depression.
I really like that. That's actually how I coach people to decrease caffeine. So there are people, I used to be one of those people who drank 2 pots of coffee a day, working in a trauma unit, working nights. So it was just so hard to stay awake. I would just all night long be drinking coffee. So when you start trying to cut that back, you get massive headaches. So I just started mixing. First, I just started mixing a little bit of decaf in the morning, the morning coffee pot. And then pretty soon it was almost all decaf. So just slowly decreasing it so I didn't get those massive headaches and withdrawal symptoms.
Right, because you don't like to suffer. And we don't ever want you to suffer. So if you learned anything today, please write it down, post it on any of your social media, And then go to Apple Podcast or brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. Leave us a review, ask questions. We love success stories.
We do.
If we read them, we'll send you a signed copy of Tana's book. You can also, when you leave a question or a review for the podcast, we'll enter you into a raffle for her book. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vampire or Vaping Week. In this podcast, we're going to go through what's brain in the news. You know, what are the interesting articles that Tana and I have picked out about the brain that has been in the news. But before we do that,
I have an amazing review. This is actually, it's a little long, but it's so great. I just have to read it because we love success stories. We always say, please leave us your success stories. Go to brainwarriorsway.com. Leave us your success stories because they are our payment. That's our joy juice. Okay, so my daughter's rating was 25 out of 27 on the depression scale. She was contemplating suicide every day. She had been in and out of 2 psych facilities. She had tried about 10 different antidepressants. Nothing was helping her. But Dr. Grin saved her life, all in caps. He took 2+ hours to review the brain scan and other tests that were done, and he came up with a plan that is working for her. We love Dr. Grin, side note. He listened to her and he laid out a plan of therapy, antidepressant meds, supplements, and vitamins that has changed her life. She is now back at college playing the sport that she loves. She's happy again. She's interacting and laughing with her friends and teammates. She has a sense of purpose and she is living a normal 20-year-old life. My husband and I felt like a 20-pound weight was lifted off our shoulders. We didn't know what to do and who to turn to. Dr. Grin talked to us, not down to us. He explained why she needs these meds and vitamins. My husband especially needed to hear this reasoning. He does not understand depression. He thought she just needed to think positively. Get out of bed and do something you enjoy. This will pass. But depression doesn't just magically go away. Dr. Grin's plan was very specific, and he had reasons behind every part of the plan. My daughter and husband's relationship has been repaired. It's gonna make me cry. I know this will be a journey with ups and downs, but we are on the right path. As somebody who had depression, it's really hard when someone tells you,
snap out of it. Because it's not possible. And then that just demoralizes
It's
you
so painful.
more, right? Because people don't see it as a medical problem. They see it as a moral problem.
So congratulations. This is by Christy Z.
That's why we do what we do. All right. Brain in the news. The statistics show online bullying increased among teens and tweens 3.5% since the 2014-15 school year. Cyberbullying is on the rise.
Why?
A 12-year-old was an all-American girl before suicide.
Oh my God. And you have to ask yourself why. What makes kids want to be that mean? I know that we talk about hormones and how 14 to 16 is the meanest time in a kid's life. That's when they're the meanest. But you just have to ask yourself, why don't they realize that they're being so mean they're ruining someone's life? And Mo, by the way, it doesn't stop when they're teenagers. If you, like, even on my social media, because we have public platforms, we get really mean stuff on there, but the difference is I don't care at this stage. At this stage of my life, at this age, I just block people. I just will not let them be on my sites. But at that age, it's, when social pressure is so strong, it's such a hard, at that age, that would have devastated me.
And if you don't have a close...
In fact, it did devastate me. We just didn't have social media.
Right. So you imagine...
Right.
If people said that, and all of a sudden, not only everybody in the school knows,
but not everyone everywhere,
but everyone everywhere. And you often feel like there's an avalanche of hatred.
And you don't have the skill set to understand that it doesn't really matter. You don't have that skill set yet.
Well, and we have an issue coming up. Our 9-year-old niece wants a phone. And so when do you need a phone?
She was already cyberbullied. It was crazy. 9 years old. And someone posted something about her on the internet. It was just crazy. And I don't even think the other child understood how mean it was, but how hurtful it was. That's one of the problems. Maybe we need to do a better job of educating our kids on how much certain things can hurt other people. Because I don't even think she realized it, but it was really devastating.
But putting those parental protective apps on the phones, and some little kids, we actually want them to have phones.
Right.
Because they have GPS devices, we can track them.
Or they have no choice. They have to, there are some kids, there are parents who share custody. There are parents who have to work. Okay. There's just not a choice. They need to be able to reach their kids or sporting events. There's a lot of reasons. We're not one of those, we aren't people who are just like, oh, you should not give your kids phones. Yeah. Don't give them phones until you have to. But there are people who have to.
Right. So what are things parents can do about cyberbullying? Watch out for changes in behavior. If kids are being bullied, they'll begin to want to avoid school, sports, and other activities. And if you don't have a good relationship with your child is not going to tell you about what's going on. That's why when we talk about special time and active listening, it's just so important to protect them. So if something is going wrong, you know about it. Be in front of the conversation, educate your kids about bullying, what it is, how it manifests, how to seek out resources at school and other places. And what I've seen is many schools, they get on top of it right away.
And many of them do not.
But because it is now such a big issue that they're better. Log any incidents with the school. When a bullying incident occurs, it's important to log it with the school. Should it escalate, the log is evidence of the complaint. And
so one thing I'm a big fan of, because I have actually known several incidents now where the school really didn't do anything. I'm a big fan of sending emails so it's in writing. So now they know about it. There's some liability there on their part. Sorry, but that's just how my brain works. It's like, you need to do your part, but get the school involved because your kid spends 8 hours a day there. So get them doing their part.
So some other tips from another article on cyberbullying. Schools already deal with bullying through anti-bullying policies and procedures. We had none of that when we were growing up. But as a teacher or school staff member, some of the things they can do: provide the person being bullied with support and reassurance, tell them that they did the right thing by telling, right? Those of you who keep secrets, these secrets can actually be deadly. It's like if somebody tells you they're going to kill themselves, you have to tell other people. Yeah. Even though they said, oh, please don't tell anybody. evidence. Help the child keep relevant evidence for investigations. This can be done by taking screenshots or printing web pages. Do not allow the deletion of phone messages. Inform, give the child advice for making sure it does not happen again. This can include changing passwords, contact details, blocking profiles. I cannot tell you the number of people who, for 14-year-old, they're being either bullied or enticed by adults that are pedophiles.
Yeah, that happened actually to us on one of Chloe's acting profiles.
No retaliation. Ensure that the young person does not retaliate or reply to the messages, right? I mean, because both of us have been cyberbullied, that our first instinct is to say something wicked or nasty back.
Right.
And what we found when people do that in a public forum,
other people do it for you.
That our fans, our brain warriors will go and respond. So don't retaliate. Privacy, encourage a child to keep personal information private, and investigation. The cyberbullying claim needs to be investigated fully. If the perpetrator is known, ask them to remove offending remarks, but all records should be kept. Report it. It's just so important that people are not quiet about this.
And one thing I want to talk about is, what are some of the signs that your kid's being bullied if they're not coming out and telling you they're being bullied? They'll start to say that they're sick a lot. They don't want to go to school, and they'll start to claim a lot of physical problems. My stomach hurts, my head hurts, whatever. They'll start to just start playing sick. And they may actually even look sick because they'll be depressed.
And there's some groups of kids that are more likely to be bullied.
Right.
ADD kids, for example, they often are conflict seeking or excitement driven, impulsive. And so they say things that get other people mad at them and make it more likely that they're going to be bullied. Autistic kids.
Yes.
Because they don't read social cues and they can get stuck on, certain rituals.
Well, and one of the things that makes me really sad and really irritated is kids that have certain disabilities. I hate the word disabilities even. Let's just say challenges. It's amazing to me that in this day and age that kids will still tease kids like that or really make fun of them if they wear a hearing aid or they walk with, crutches, or just it's bizarre, but they still do it, and they still do it a lot.
Because the empathy part of their brain is not fully developed.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about it from that perspective. Yeah.
We talked about vaping. Vaping damages development, and that's why everybody's upset about it when companies are marketing to teenagers, because if your brain's not fully developed, and then on top of that, you're drinking alcohol, smoking pot, vaping, you might permanently be 14.
So maybe rather than getting so annoyed, as parents, we can understand that that part of their brain's not developed yet, and we act as their frontal lobes and teach them about empathy and how hurtful what they're doing is.
Well, and if you think about it, children are growing up more and more by themselves.
Right.
Because the economy and both parents having to work, the lack of or the decreased supervision, kids are going to act more like kids who have frontal lobes that are not yet developed. And so appropriate supervision is critical. Beginning to work on a new book, Personalized Parenting Strategies to Your Child's Brain Type. And supervision is so important. And sort of the hallmark thought of the book is you need to be your child's frontal lobes until theirs develop.
Right.
Which is longer than we thought.
So 2 things that we've taught Chloe, when something's not going well, or she's not doing well at something, or even in this situation, we want her to step back and ask herself, what can she learn from it and what can she do to make the situation better? Be in the solution. So to be in the solution, what can I do? We want to empower her to have a solution rather than feeling like a victim. And the other thing that I always teach her is, what can I learn? What can I be grateful for? What can I be thankful for? Now that's really hard to do when someone's bullying you, right? But if you can put yourself in that mindset, even if it's a hard thing to answer, even if it's something tiny, it just takes you out of that negative victim mode and it puts you in a more resourceful state. And we've taught her that since she was little.
Well, we have so many other brain in the news things to talk about, but we're running out of time.
That was a good one,
we'll
though.
save them for next week. We should probably have bullying week or how to deal with bullies. And they're bullies, not just
at work,
teenagers.
No.
They're clearly bullies in medicine. I've been bullied a lot. And, I don't hang out with people who...
right. But sexual harassment is a form of bullying. I mean, there's all kinds of bullying.
So we'll do a bullying week. All right. So what did you learn? Post it. And also we would love for you to leave a review, ask a question at brainwarriorswaypodcast.com or leave a review on Apple Podcast. We are so grateful that you listen. Stay with us.
Welcome back. We are going to read your questions. This is one of my favorite segments that we do during the week. So please leave your questions for us. You can go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com, go to the review section, and you can leave your questions for us because we really enjoy answering them. And before we get started, make sure that you go to that same website, brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. And if you do leave questions, it will enter you into a raffle to receive my cookbook, The Brain Warriors Way cookbook, which I'm really, I just love it. It's very practical. So we'll send you one of those if you win.
And we've had all sorts of those recipes in the last couple of weeks. So the sesame kale salad recipe,
the shawarma,
which is just one of my favorite ever. That kale salad I could have every week.
Crock-pot shawarma we had.
The lentil soup.
The chicken soup.
Is so
good.
The
healing chicken soup. Yeah, we had all kinds. The brownies.
All right, let's get to your questions. My son really struggles with ants, automatic negative thoughts, and self-medicates with marijuana because he said it's the only thing that knocks out the ants for hours at a time. Do you have some better strategies to get rid of them? Other than exercise, since he already does a lot of that. I love your podcast. Thank you for all the great help you give people.
We did an entire week on ants too, right? So we'll give you an answer here, but you can also go back and listen to our podcast on ants.
Well, and I don't know how old he is, but even, if he's a teenager or a young adult, you can also get him my book, Captain Snout and the Superpower Questions. Even though it's a kid's book, it's practical, powerful. But and share this episode with him. Whenever you feel sad or mad or nervous or out of control, I want you to write down what you're thinking and then ask yourself, is it true? Can you absolutely know if it's true? Because the problem with medicating the ants is they only, when the marijuana wears off, the ants get stronger because they've been mating. And these stronger mutant ants, they come and attack, which then means because you have no skill in dealing with the ants, you have to smoke more pot or whatever, drink alcohol. But isn't that actually making it, when you come down from it, it makes it a little worse because you're sort of damaging your brain's ability to manage the thought. So when the ants attack, just be really clear, write them down, and then assess them. And in Feel Better Fast and Make It Last, or Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, there are whole sections on how to get rid of the ants, but it basically involves identifying them, right? Write down the negative thoughts, and then ask yourself these questions. Is it true? Can I absolutely know if it's true? How do I feel when I believe it? And who would I be without it? And my favorite part of the whole process we teach is turning the thought around to the opposite and ask yourself if the opposite of the bad thought running through your head is not true.
Right.
So the example I like to give, if I think to myself, Tana never listens to me.
Why do you always use that one?
Because I've had that thought, Tana never listens to me. And so then I write it down. And I'm like, well, is that true? And I'm like, no, she listens to me all the time.
Right.
You know, I make her special cappuccino in the morning, and we always sit
sit and
for
talk.
20 minutes. But that's what people don't know, that thoughts that lie to you can hijack your life. Because if you don't question a thought,
Right.
you believe it.
Right. And
100%, and then you act out of the
one thing
belief.
I like that you often say is you were really great at talking back to your parents when you were a teenager, but no one ever taught you to talk back to yourself.
Right.
So, and that's more important, way more important, actually. It'll get you in a lot less trouble. It'll help save your life.
And so by writing down the thoughts, you get them out of your head. You can then challenge them in the method that we give you, and you won't have to medicate them.
And let's talk about a couple of practical things. Okay. So, a lot of people claim that magnesium makes them feel a little calmer. So what about taking some magnesium? Like I have to take it to sleep. I feel sleepy when I take magnesium.
So magnesium is one of our favorite. Actually, BrainMD has a chewable magnesium.
So many people claim that magnesium helps.
Love. GABA helps.
Right.
Theanine helps. So if he's wants to use a substance, well, let's use something that we know won't hurt you. Because marijuana, the studies are actually pretty clear on marijuana. It makes you more anxious, more depressed, and a little bit paranoid. And so that's not a good ant-killing prescription.
One more thing. So one of the other things that I love for sleep, lavender and valerian tea really helps at night to calm you down. So between the magnesium, I take a little bit of melatonin, and the lavender and valerian tea, like it just takes the edge off.
Awesome. All right. Another question. Wondered if you could address brain injuries on your podcast. I'm coming up on a year since I had a serious fall. I did go to the emergency room, but basically they just do a CAT scan for brain bleed and x-ray to determine if anything is broken. I've been healing little by little with lots of sleep and eating the best I can. Reading what I can find on concussions. I wasn't able to walk for almost 4 months.
Wow.
Which has gotten better, but balance is still an issue. Would love to get brain imaging done at your clinic, but insurance won't likely cover it. Although, you know, one of the things we learned
getting more and more
is that about 62% of our patients get their services here, including the scans, covered by insurance. Are there specific supplements? I really enjoy your podcast and a few book of yours that I've read from Bridget M.
So before we get too far down that road, we did an entire week on brain injuries. So make sure you go back and listen to that podcast. Look for Brain Injury Week. I don't know what it's called, but it has something about brain injury in the week, so that you get a whole bunch of information. But then now answer a question.
Yeah, what did we call it? Skillet to the
I
head
can't
or something like that?
I don't remember, but it was...
All right. If you've had a brain injury, what Bridget said is absolutely right. People go to the emergency room, just like when your mom, they do a CAT scan. They actually missed her.
And she had a brain bleed, and they said she was fine.
Yeah. And that's appropriate. But the thing they don't tell you is because you've hurt your brain, it is critical to now put your brain in a healing environment. It's a perfect brain warrior. If you had a head injury, you want to be a brain warrior. And so food really matters. Kill the sugar, kill the artificial dyes and sweeteners, because they make it harder to recover, which is why it's insane to have Gatorade on the sidelines of football games and sporting events.
So it's insane to have an insane drink on the sideline of an insane sport.
And I'm a psychiatrist.
Right. You like insane. You specialize in insane.
I know insane when I see it, and that's insane. Also, you want to make sure you don't end up with the Irlen syndrome, IRLEN. Go to IRLEN.com and learn about it. People often have a head injury, often after a head injury, develop a visual processing issue where they're sensitive to light, they have depth perception issues, reading becomes hard, they have headaches, they're irritable, and just going on psychiatric drugs is, often not the answer, because to treat Irlen, people often will wear colored filtered lenses like blue lenses or yellow lenses or orange lenses or brown lenses, depending on your brain, makes a monster difference. For our NFL study, we've done 300 NFL players, high levels of damage. What we did with them is taught them about brain health. And I think my book, Memory Rescue, there's a whole chapter on concussions and how to heal from them. But I love omega-3 fatty acids, a multiple vitamin. We make something called Brain and Memory Power Boost, and we actually used our Neurivite Plus Omega-3 Power Brain and Memory Power Boost, and 80% of our players showed improvement in as little as 2 months.
And so one of the things we talk about even in the Brain Warriors way is you want to be assessed. We always treat according to your numbers, your assessment, right? You get your blood work done. We want to know what's low because you need the proper nutrients. You want to be doing stuff, obviously, to increase blood flow, because most of us in this society do things that are not helping to increase blood flow. So that's what we want to be really focusing on, right, with head injuries.
So 2 more quick questions. My teenage son has recently struggled with his mood, and they have heard me talk about the benefits of omega-3 supplements. Can you explain why they may help with mood disorders? So omega-3 power has almost 3 grams of fish oil and 1,440 milligrams of omega-3s in the right blend to support your mood. So there's more EPA than DHA. EPA has been found to be helpful for mood and focus. DHA is more helpful for anxiety and memory, but we have a big slug of both of those. And 25% of what makes up your nerve cell membranes in the brain are omega-3 fatty acids. So when they're low, inflammation goes up, communication in your brain goes down, and you're more vulnerable to cognitive impairment and mood issues. So head to head against antidepressants, there's a study from New Zealand. Prozac worked in 51% of the cases. Omega-3 fatty acids worked in 58% of the cases. And when they did both, it was almost in the 80%.
One of the things I like about fish oil is a lot of the studies, there are a lot of doctors using really high dose fish oil. Now, I'm not saying don't do that unless you're actually having someone follow you. But for healing, I know at A4M where I take my courses, there are doctors using up to like 15 grams a day of
I think
fish oil, but don't do
6
that.
grams a day is fine. And in Brain and Body Power Max, which is sort of our repair formula,
right,
we have 4 capsules of omega-3 power, which has just about 6 grams.
Right, which is great.
Last question. Of the amazing supplements BrainMD sells, which do you recommend for people who struggle with focus and forethought and impulse control? And that's exactly why I made Focus and Energy. Focus and Energy has green tea, no caffeine, green tea extract, which has been found to be helpful for energy and focus, ashwagandha, which will actually calm you but help you focus. So rather than the stimulants like Adderall or Ritalin that may agitate some people, rhodiola, which helps with stress, ginseng, and choline, which helps with focus and memory. So it's a great combination product to be helpful. So those are the questions this week. Thank you so much.
And don't forget to tag us on Instagram. Share this information. If it's been helpful, go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com, leave your questions or a review. And you can also go to Apple Podcast and leave a review there. Thanks a lot. If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're considering coming to Amen clinics or trying some of the brain healthy supplements from BrainMD, you can use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com or a 10% discount on all supplements at brainmdhealth.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.